Welcome to the Contrarians, where we are right and you are wrong. I'm Julio.
And I'm Alex. Here on the show, we rage against the Rotten Tomatoes machine. For the first half of each episode, Contrarians Corner, we trash the fresh red tomatoes and praise the rotten green splotches, making our case any way we can.
The aptly titled Real Talk serves as the second half of each episode. This is where we discuss our true feelings on the movie we're covering. For more information on our podcast and to browse past episodes, you can head over to our website, wearethecontrarians.com.
From there, you can also access our Patreon and merchandise, because capitalism.
If you enjoy our attempts at comedic film discussions, we encourage you to subscribe and leave us a review on whatever podcatcher you use.
If you'd like to reach out to us directly, that's what social media is for. You can find us on most platforms as @ContrarianPrime.
You can also see what we look like if you go to youtube.com/@ContrarianPrime, and you can contact us by email at wearethecontrarians@gmail.com.
I think that covers it.
Then it's time for the podcast. And we are recording for Contrarians Corner for the CAT'S MEOW.
Hello and welcome to the Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong. My name is Alex, joined, as always, and continually through the summer of Bogdanovich films and PJ parties, as we add another entry into the Peter Bogdanovich vault here, the Bogdanov vault, as it were. Kirsten Dunst, triumphantly returning to the Contrarians. A whole slew of returns here. Carrie Ells, Jennifer Tilly, who once again, we've had her on for her Academy Award outing. She's definitely trying to reclaim some of that glory here. Academy Award nominated outing, I should say.
Close enough.
Dude, Eddie Izzard, when it hit at the end of the movie, the whole time I was like, who is this guy? And then Eddie Izzard hit the screen. It's like, oh, of course.
Do you know Eddie Izzard as a comedian or as an actor?
Comedian.
Okay.
Who certainly for the majority of his career has had a different look than that he has in this movie. But his eyes, just piercing eyes. So Charles Chaplin back in the fold, as womanizing as ever here.
Not to get too far into it already, but do you think Chaplin is a surrogate P-Bog character in this movie?
Might as well be, yeah.
It's P-Bog making it into the new millennium, Alex. We are almost to the end of the journey, sadly. This is
kicking and screaming, though, as this movie's about happenings of 1924.
Yes. Yeah, P-Bog. I do not consent. What's the thing about you can take the all Hollywood out of a filmmaker, but you can't take the filmmaker out of all Hollywood, or whatever the saying would be. But it's just another Nickelodeon, another movie about Hollywood and the beginnings of movies and all that stuff, except here there's nobody likable.
Yeah, that's true. I was trying to think of an immediate retort of someone likable, but not really. I mean, Carrie Ells is pretty, and he says the title of the movie.
Staring straight into the camera.
But we are here. Our summer journey continues on. Our film today, released in the U.S. on April 12th of 2002, but had premiered at the Locarno Film Festival, 8 months before then, on August 3rd of 2001. Of course, directed by Peter Bogdanovich. The screenplay written by Stephen Peros, and this is based off his stage play of the same name. Julio, have you ever seen a performance of the CAT'S MEOW?
No. I wish I had. So I could tell you, man, it was awesome. They recreated that ship, and it was like you were at sea.
The Lazarus. To Avalon we go. In the opening credits is Jennifer Tilly in a Peter Bogdanovich film, The CAT'S MEOW.
On stage, who are like those? Like you have Ian McKellen playing Hearst.
B. Coop as
Chaplin.
No, I was gonna say is Tom, but yeah.
No, yeah, B. Coop as Tom. Who's the Marion character? Taylor Swift.
Jesus,
that's the gimmick casting.
Yeah, that's the Gary Marshall version. So, as we've experienced with old P-Bog, some ups and downs critically, we're back on the fresh end of things here today as we sit at a 76% on Rotten Tomatoes. Unlike most movies we do, no texts were exchanged about this. neither Julio nor I have any inkling of how the other feel about this. So should make for an interesting second half. But Julio, like I said, we're starting off fresh with this. We're back on the back in the good graces of Bogdanovich's films. What quotes did you pull for us?
Mr. Chaplin, did you happen to notice the rave review I gave your last picture, A Woman of Paris?
Yes, I did. Thank you. That was most kind.
So deserved. So deserved. It just stinks that nobody went to see it.
Alex, you may notice a theme as it happens sometimes in these episodes. So let's start with Jerry Chambray from Your Movies, Cleveland.com, who says The Cat's Meow is a perfect return to form for director Peter Bogdanovich. It's rich in the same flavor of his earlier films. So, perfect pun aside. Is it a good thing that it's the same flavor of his earlier films? 50 years into his career, should he be trying something else?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious thing to say here in this case is like, stick with what works, don't fix what's not broken. But as we've covered in painstaking detail, almost every movie he made lost money. So maybe it was time for him to kind of, steer a different course,
Give me
try a 180.
Give me a Bogdanovich action movie. Put him with Arnold. This was 2002. What was Schwarzenegger doing?
A few years before this, he was doing End of Days. I think in 2002, I think he was the governor of California. But
too late.
I can't remember if that was 02 or 04 when he got nominated. But no, 03 was Rise of the Machines, right? So, I mean, he was still out there.
All right, P-Bog. Just it doesn't have to be another Terminator movie, but
you could have had Peter Bogdanovich direct Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines.
God.
And you know what would happen?
The coffin with Sarah Connor's corpse. That's the thing that gets lost, and it keeps changing hands throughout the movie.
Well, the end of the movie where John Connor gets on the radio and is trying to call for help. It'll be Peter Bogdanovich on the radio because, as we've seen in almost all of his movies, the voice on the radio is always Peter Bogdanovich.
Yes.
So it'd be P-Bog's really calm, sultry voice going, "Connor, who's in charge there?"
Well, what could have been? Instead, we got The Cat's Meow, Peter Bogdanovich yet again adapting a play, and yet again dipping his toe into yesteryear. But critics liked it because Brian Webster from Apollo Guide said, proves that director Peter Bogdanovich has still got the ability to pull together a strong production. And then Matthew Turner from View London said, splendidly acted decadent drama, a must for all fans of Hollywood scandal and a welcome return to form for Peter Bogdanovich. A lot of celebration about the return of P-Bog. I wonder if he just hit them back with, I never left. This comes, Alex, after a hiatus. He had another hiatus in P-Bog's filmography. I think that it'd been 7 years since he had made a movie. The Thing Called Love, 1993, that was his last theatrical. Then he worked on TV for a while. And this was his comeback, The Cat's Meow. The best he could do was get Eddie Izzard to play Chaplin. That was the extent of his power. Then Gene Lowerson from the San Diego Metropolitan says, it's mostly fun, and if you like the music and style of the period, you probably won't leave the theater wishing you had your money back.
That's definitely true. If you like the music, of the Roaring '20s, it's here in spades.
How often does Gene Lowerson leave the theater wishing she had her money back? And that's it's the bottom of the barrel as far as expectations. We're going to close with Joe Blow from Joe Blow's Movie Network, who says, slap Cutie Pie Kirsten Dunst into the mix, and I'm there with bells on.
Something very off-putting about calling Kirsten Dunst Cutie Pie.
Acclaimed actress, Academy Award nominee.
Specifically because the last movie I watched with her, and it was Melancholia. Imagine the review of Melancholia. Slap Cutie Pie Kirsten Dunst in the middle of this Von Trier romp.
Well, Melancholia was still decades away from Kirsten Dunst. Not that much, actually. 2001, right? So Melancholia is
a decade.
A decade, exactly a decade. That's how she celebrated 10 years since she survived a P-Bog movie.
It is funny, though, because it's, she invented the Manic Pixie Dream Girl and 4 years after this. So,
right. And in between, she was Mary Jane.
Dude, I was about to say, What a fucking whirlwind few years that this young lady had. We had previous entry, Drop Dead Gorgeous in 99, 2000, Bring It On, which was a hit of its time. She did this in 01, and then the game done changed forever the following year. Spider-Man.
The beginning of the end.
God damn, dude. Bring It On. That movie had a budget of $11 million and made $90 million. That might be a separation in one age and culture because you still would have been in Peru, but that movie was like a big hit amongst the kids here in the United States.
I know it as a cultural touchstone of sorts, but yeah, I've never watched it. Now, if P-Bog had directed it, it would be part of this journey. It would be his reunion with Kirsten. No, this would be his reunion with Kirsten Dunst. So do you think that the promotional materials for the Cat's Meow would be like Bring It On's Kirsten Dunst in the Cat's Meow?
Yeah, she would have been the hottest star at the time, especially domestically. Eddie Izzard, obviously a big star, and
okay, in his circles,
amongst his friends.
Yeah. Who's playing Chaplin? Eddie Izzard. Who?
You know, Bogdanovich was kicking himself that he didn't save this to come out in 03. You know, get Kirsten Dunst just to sign on. Don't tell her when they're going to make the movie. He just knows that Spider-Man's going to get made. And he's like, let's see how this plays out. Because as is tradition with the Bogdanovich films, the box office return of this was nothing less than disappointing.
Like they said, a return to form.
There you go.
P-Bog, bombing again. Alex, before we get into Contrarians Corner, I have to ask, because it was the thing that I think was at the forefront while I was watching this, at the forefront of my mind. Isn't it weird? And isn't it indicative of where Peter Bogdanovich was in his career that there really isn't a bigger cast? Like Kirsten Dunst, I get. But then, like I said, maybe Carrie Elves, but even then, like by now, he's not the Princess Bride's Carrie Elves anymore. So, you know, by the time this movie comes out, and then everybody else, it's not a name. They're like solid actors, like people that you know, like that guy.
Jennifer Tilly's a name.
But at that time, like it was almost 10 years after Bullets of Broadway. So like you're getting, by now she's like in the Chucky franchise, right? Like by the time that this movie is produced.
Bro. This is just a few years removed from Bride of Chucky. She shared the screen with John Ritter and Katherine Heigl. She was riding high, baby. Yeah, no, what did she do previous to this? Something called Fast Sofa. Brother, you can make a case this was the last movie where she really like turned in a performance.
That was it. She said one more, and if I don't get that Oscar, I'm done. I'm done trying.
I already worked with Alan. You know, we're going to work with Bogdanovich and see what happens. And if that doesn't work out, see to Chucky's in a few years, you know. To my knowledge, she doesn't really do any conventions or anything like that. So she still has that level of star about her. If she did now, I would go to it with a copy of The Cat's Meow and ask her to sign it as Lolly.
There have been whispers, Marion.
Well, stop listening to whispers and listen to me. There's nothing going on between me and Charlie.
We'll save this more for the YouTube warm-up about, you know, the basis in reality or lack thereof, perhaps, of this film. And, you know, obviously the main cast of characters in this are based off of real individuals. And, you know, some of this story is believed to have been true. So we'll get into that elsewhere. For the purposes of this, we're going to be sticking with the premise of this movie, which again is based on a play by Stephen Peros, and he penned the screenplay for this as well. On November 15th of 1924, various individuals board the luxury yacht. How do you pronounce it? Oneida?
Oneida?
Yeah. Oneida! In San Pedro, California, including its owner, publishing magnate William Randolph Hearst, and his mistress, silent film star Marion Davies, motion picture mogul Thomas H. Ince, whose birthday is the reason for the weekend cruise, and his mistress, starlet Margaret Livingston, who would portray the woman far from the city in F.W. Murnau's Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans 3 years later. international film star Charlie Chaplin, English writer Eleanor Glynn, and Luella Parsons, called Lolly in this. This is Jennifer Tilly, a film critic for Hearst's New York American. So Julio, like I said, the opening credits here. Jennifer Tilly gets the in credits. And we begin in black and white with the story of a mysterious death. We're at a funeral. And there's a voiceover here, narration. Who provides the narration here? Is that Joanna Lumley?
Yes, Eleanor. Somebody who I was not familiar with.
Same. I was going to ask you if I was supposed to know her from somewhere.
I was like, she's not anybody that we've seen before in this Bogdanovich film journey. And I don't think it's anybody that I've seen in anything else. So already disoriented. Also disoriented by the fact that Bogdanovich is using black and white to represent the present, when usually you do that for the past.
Yeah.
You'd think it's the funeral is going to be in color, and then the flashback to how we got here is going to be in black and white. But my assumption is that in true P-Bog fashion, he wanted the entire movie to be black and white because he's got a major hard-on for black and white, as we've learned over the past couple months. And the studio was like, nope, we'll let you do the beginning and the end in black and white. But we need people to actually watch the movie. So the rest is going to be in color, and that's what we're going to show in the trailers. It doesn't matter because, again, you don't know anything. The only thing that this does is establish that somebody dies. And I don't know about you, Alex, but I knew it wasn't going to be Chaplin because I think it would have been kind of a big deal if Charles Chaplin had died, while out partying in William Hearst's yacht. So I know that that's not the case. So instantly that made the mystery kind of irrelevant. Did you have the same experience where you're like, I don't care who dies. I know it's not Chaplin.
I was more just kind of watching the movie because the spoiler, the killing or death doesn't come about until there's just 25 minutes left in the movie.
Right.
So I thought it was going to be we're going to get right to it, and then the rest of it was going to be like a whodunit, and everyone else is circling the drain trying to figure out what happened. Not the case. We know whodunit very clearly, and when the death does come, it's just kind of okay, well, there's not much mystery to this now. So I was kind of hooked by this, but like I said, spoiler alert, jumped ahead about 2 acts in the film. But when the moment actually comes, I was extremely underwhelmed.
But you knew it wasn't going to be Chaplin, right?
Yes. If Charlie Chaplin had been murdered on a boat, I'm pretty sure I would have known about it. Or if there was some historical fiction that was created about Charles Chaplin being murdered on a boat, I feel like I would know about it as well.
Bogdanovich's Inglourious Bastards. Hearst takes a machine gun to Chaplin.
Right to the face.
Yeah.
Several of those participating in the weekend's festivities are at a crossroads in their lives and or careers. Chaplin, still dealing with critical and commercial failure of A Woman of Paris and the rumors he has impregnated 16-year-old Lita Gray, who appeared in his film The Kid, is in the midst of preparing The Gold Rush. And is The Gold Rush... Modern Times is what we did. We didn't do The Gold Rush on here, right?
Right. I think Gold Rush we've just seen separately. I have the Criterion. I think you do as well.
Yeah, I do too. So
every time somebody said the Gold Rush, you're like, that's a chainsaw.
Exactly. Davies longs to appear in slapstick comedy rather than the somber costumes dramas to which Hearst has kept her confined. Heinz's eponymous film studio is in dire financial straits, so he hopes to convince Hearst to take him on as a partner in Cosmopolitan Pictures. Parsons would like to relocate from the East Coast to more glamorous Hollywood. This all happens very quick. This introduction, this cast of characters, they're boarding the ship, not unlike the class in Jason Takes Manhattan boarding the Lazarus. It is funny how mercilessly Chaplin gets roasted the second he steps on the boat about, his recent failures and flops and what were you thinking when you did that? It's just kind of funny to a potential casual viewer, the idea of the biggest name as far as, who's being portrayed in this is immediately the subject of ridicule.
Yeah, you can feel that Bogdanovich has an axe to grind against Chaplin because there is no... Well, actually, I couldn't tell. I couldn't tell if the movie wanted me to think that Chaplin, as much as of a terrible person as he is, according to this movie, he's still better than the other people surrounding him, or if he's just as bad as them. But Bogdanovich doesn't pull any punches. And I felt that was a little hypocritical, right? Like he's criticizing Chaplin for having these relationships with actresses that work for him, who are much younger than him. Everything that he's calling out as unprofessional is stuff that we know now without passing judgment, just saying, like, as far as the facts, like that's something that Peter Bogdanovich did himself. So
just a little bit of reading in 2001 would also arrive someone at that conclusion.
Well, people go to the movies so they don't have to read, Alex.
This is true.
But yeah, it felt like maybe watching this, not knowing anything about the filmmaker, I would have been like, all right, well, obviously he doesn't like Chaplin. But in this case, it felt a little bit like the kettle calling the pot black. I'm like, come on, P-Bog, that's you. I mean, people, 50 years, 100 years from now, people are going to be making the same points about you, except it'll be a podcast, not a movie.
Also, I forgot to call out, there is a radio playing at the beginning, and Peter Bogdanovich does the voiceover on it.
Of course.
I'm just going to immediately assume every film I see from this point on in the rest of my life, when there's a voiceover on the radio, hey, it's Peter Bogdanovich.
He lost his shirt in that last picture.
Oh, when they say so of a budget on the gold rush, his partners aren't even returning his phone
Not to
calls.
mention that a 16-year-old leading lady collapsed on the set, pregnant.
No kidding. Huh. You learn about the birds and the bees so much
Buzz
younger
around
these
town is
days.
that Chaplin did the pollinating.
Oh, yeah?
Do you think Cary Elves is too handsome to be a studio head?
I think, and particularly in this, he's too handsome for me to feel bad for him.
Yeah, boo-hoo. He can't perform with his mistress because he's too stressed out
Yeah,
to have those problems.
exactly. He's got this hot actress that's just constantly like begging for his attention, and he's just, woe's me, I'm too pretty, my hair's too perfect. I mean, his luck does run out, but
I mean, he's been actively trying through the entire movie, basically, to get himself shot, just because this happens to
that's
everybody.
the other thing. Like, he's down on his luck, but he's a real son of a bitch in this. He's a real shit stirrer. He's constantly just like, he's got his ladle in the pot, just stirring it this entire movie, sticking his nose where it doesn't belong, and none of it is out of the goodness of his heart trying to like resolve issues or anything. It's just about him getting ahead when he could be getting head, but he's ignoring his mistress.
I almost made that joke. Yeah, it's the thing is, I was thinking of Nickelodeon just because it's the most direct parallel, I think, in the P-Bog journey, and the studio head there, that looked like a studio head, right? Like smarmy and just this dude that he didn't look like a movie star. He looked like the guy behind the studio. And but here, Cary Elves steps out of his limousine, steps into the boat, and he's just too good looking. That's the thing. And then, of course, he proceeds to make all sorts of mistakes over this weekend. The thing that I found funny is that they're there to celebrate his birthday, but he gets roasted more than Chaplin.
He does?
Right, yeah, because they keep telling him, basically Hearst keeps treating him like he is beneath him, right? Because his studio is struggling.
Oh, yeah. WR is just constantly sunning him. Roasted in the sense, like with Chaplin, it's like just a group of people all at once, laughing and having a chortle at his expense. With Tom here, though, yeah, every time he tries to talk to WR about anything, it ends up with him just getting completely like owned. His first attempt to try to business up with them, he's making some claims that obviously WR doesn't agree with. And WR, of course, played by Edward Herman. And he is like, he has a pistol and he's trying to shoot at seagulls, and he shoots one down and he says, "Have you ever eaten a seagull, Tom?" And he says, "No." He's like, "Well, they taste awful, a lot like crow, And it's just, he walks off and it's the mic drop of the entire, like, of the whole movie. And Cary Elves is just like, this motherfucker.
But audiences across the world scratch their heads. Like, what the fuck did he mean?
We did forget to mention, though, that when all the characters board, including a pair of, I guess you'd call them flappers at the time.
That sounds more vulgar than it really is.
Flappers has always sound like way worse than like, a lot of the derogatory terms for women. But that's, the women of the 20s. They were called flappers. They like to dance and do the Charleston. But after they board and, the anchor's up, one of Tom's friends says to him, this is going to be a hell of a cruise or something. And he just goes, yeah, the cat's meow.
There are titular lines and there are titular lines. The cat's meow. It's a tough one. How do you deliver that without coming across as clunky and staged? And Carrie Elves can't pull it off. He's just staring off into the camera. It's
like, that's one of my favorite jokes. We talk about this all the time. One of my favorite jokes in Hot Tub Time Machine is when Craig Robinson says, it must be some kind of hot tub time machine. And then he looks at the camera and like that's played for laughs because it's so ridiculous. That's pretty much this here, because it's at no point in the rest of the movie does Carrie Ells use any other hot crackers or anything like that. Right. Any other exclamatory expressions of the time.
Speaking of things of the time, Alex, did you feel, as much as we loved them, did you feel Kirsten Dunst and Jennifer Tilly were a little too contemporary for a story that's set in the 20s?
Kirsten Dunst is a fantastic actress. We know this. This is, I cannot tell a lie. But Jennifer Tilly, maybe with the veil of Bullets Over Broadway, just kind of remembering her in that, because I'm being serious. I think she kind of, was trying to wind back the clock a little bit. Kirsten Dunst, for some of her good line delivery in this, does not feel like someone who's attempting to act like they're in 1924. I'm not saying I could do a better job, but I can tell you, like, Alison Pill in Midnight in Paris, I love her performance in that so much as Zelda Fitzgerald. And I feel like she understands the tone, and like, even Owen Wilson says in that, and she's exactly like you think she would be. And in this, yes, I feel like Kirsten Dunst was still fairly young in her acting career. I don't feel she was young in her acting career. And I feel like today we'd have a better shot at her nailing this performance. But like I said, she does have some good line delivery in this from time to time, but I'm with you of the contemporary nature of her performance kind of takes the movie off track a little bit.
Right.
Because she's the lead.
She's in the poster, in the center of the poster. She's the only actress that you go like, oh, I know her. Everybody else, maybe that works against her, that she's so well known compared to everybody else in the cast. Everybody else in the cast is pretty stuffy, and then they're also mostly unknown, so they're extra stuffy because of that. It's something that I figure P-Bog would have caught, but I guess he also needed at least one face, right? You need somebody that's going to bring people to the theater. So he's like, screw it. We'll just deal with it as it comes. She's fine. I mean, other than that, once you adjust your expectations, you're like, okay, it's going to be Kirsten Dunst in that time travel movie where she went back to the 20s. The part that maybe is harder to buy is just that she's in this romance with a dude that's old enough to be her grandpa. But you like this guy. We were talking about it before we started recording. What's his name? Herman?
Ed Herman?
Yeah, Ed Herman more than I do. Like, I know him as the grandpa in Gilmore Girls, which is a show I haven't really watched. Like, I know him because my wife likes it, and I've seen a few episodes in the background. But he is very, very serious and very reserved in that show, not the way that he is in this movie, which is fine, except that the way that he is in this movie is not the way I thought William Hurst would be. Like, when I think of William Hurst, I think of the guy that inspired Citizen Kane. When I think of Citizen Kane, I think of a ruthless media mogul that doesn't take shit from anybody and that is just cold-blooded, cold-hearted, and so on. Maybe I'm misremembering Citizen Kane. Or maybe I'm wrong for trying to draw a direct comparison between Citizen Kane and William Hurst and the William Hurst that we see here. But this grandpa, yes, he is kind of ruthless and manipulative, but he also is extremely insecure. He breaks down in tears at least 3 times during the movie. It's like hashtag not my Hearst, hashtag not my Kane. How do you feel about this dude?
You see, you are my whole world.
Ed Herman, Edward, as he's billed, I assume to not be confused with the former UFC fighter, Ed Short Fuse Herman. Of course, I know him as Max from The Lost Boys. That's what first comes to mind with him. He also had a memorable appearance on an episode of 30 Rock, amongst other things. I'm familiar with his work. In this, I think to the point of kind of overcrowding the field, I think he put a lot of stock into what this movie was going to be, what he perceived it was going to be, and was like, I got to go for this, man. This could potentially be my Oscar. So yeah, like you said, he's crying a lot. He's very erratic in movement. He has a lot of facial expressions, and instead of coming off as like a polished actor, he just comes across as a guy who's like, this is my opportunity. And because this movie made like less than $5 million, when you do that and you come back and watch it, you're like, and let's dial it back a little bit, brother. Come on. What's Michael Cera saying? Superbad. It's soccer, Greg. Come on.
It's Kirsten Dunst in the poster, not you. Calm down.
He is on the poster, but he's way in the background.
Yes. The only name that's smaller than his in the poster is Peter Bogdanovich's.
And then in parentheses next to Bogdanovich, it's like, yes, the studio gave him money again. Julio, explain to me the Curse of California as they explain it to Jennifer Tilly here at this first dinner scene.
Yeah, what is this, Alex? Is it a mea culpa from Bogdanovich, or is it him once again being having a blind spot for his own deficiencies? Because the Curse of California is that you go to California, to Hollywood, and this is of course back in the 20s, but clearly it would apply to Hollywood at any point, including now. But you go to California and it basically, you get the bite, the showbiz infection, and then you slowly lose your morals, worship money as the ultimate god, and basically become a shallow monster, which, as we were saying at the beginning of this recording, it's nobody here is sympathetic. That description fits every single character in the movie. Even Jennifer Tilly, who initially seems like she might be the innocent out of everybody, and then by the end of the movie, she's also transformed into somebody that's just hungry for money and success and willing to step on anybody to get what they want. Sure, I mean, coming from a filmmaker that couldn't really get his movies to make money anymore, that seems a little better and a little...
It's their fault, not mine.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, I didn't sell out the way that they did. I did not step on other people the way that they did. And that's why it's taken me 7 years to come back to theaters. I don't know, P-Bog. I like his movies overall, but there seems to be a lack of introspection sometimes in some of them. Or is he even more of a genius than we think? And this was him going meta and really, like I said, this is mea culpa. This is him not airing grievances, but really apologizing. It's like, these are my people. I apologize in their behalf. I mean, take Marion, right? Like Kirsten Dunst. Are we supposed to like her character? Are we supposed to be on her side and feel bad for her because Charlie Chaplin is harassing her the entire trip, and she's being overprotected by Hearst? Or are we supposed to find her just as manipulative and as shallow as everybody else?
It's strange. You would think that, but then at the end they try to give her this big moment of like self-realization, but she seems throughout the whole movie very manipulative.
Right?
Yeah. I think what the intent of it was to explain this to Jennifer Tilly, like her character Lolly, and her to be like, oh, woe's me. And then in the end where she has like the fucking Kaiser Soze reveal where she is like potentially the most evil of them all. It's like, oh, she was infected with the Curse of California.
I think that some people at that table are more aware of the fact that they're infected than others. Like, I think Chaplin knows. And he owns it. He's happy. He's happy about it. It is, or by the way, I just like you, I know him mostly as a comedian. I know he's in movies here and there. But the problem is that there's only one Chaplin other than Chaplin, and that is Robert Downey Jr. So anybody else that I may see playing Chaplin is just going to fall short. Did you buy him as Chaplin, or were you having that trouble too, where you're like, it's Eddie Izzard? It's not Chaplin. It's not, he doesn't have the mannerisms. There's a couple times in the movie where he tries to do a Chaplin routine when he's dancing or he's running into things to be funny, and it just doesn't look like it.
Yeah, it was a lot to ask. And it's not being, hyperbolic or, over exaggerative to say that physically Charles Chaplin, I mean that like his presence and his mannerisms, is one of the most famous actors of all time. So it's a lot to ask for someone to try to capture that, and also in a way that's toned down, because he's not, dancing or doing pratfalls or practical effects or whatnot. It's supposed to be the humanized, drunk, womanizing side of him.
Yeah, he's only sexually harassing people. Exactly.
Where's the fun at?
Man, I'll tell you, the fun was like 5 movies ago with P-Bog. Because I remember once upon a time, he made movies about people that were relatable, people that you could identify with and root for. I didn't have anybody that I was rooting for here. The only question was, who's going to get shot, and could it be more than one person?
Who can identify with Charles Chaplin besides Charles Chaplin?
Yes.
He does. There is this great reoccurring bit, though, of him thinking of ideas for his movies and asking people, is that funny? I really got a kick out of that. And speaking of which, we talked about her desire to do comedies. There's a part where they screen not dailies, but footage from her upcoming movie in the room with everybody, and everyone's kind of falling asleep and bored with the drama. And then when the comedy kicks in, everyone comes to life and starts laughing. And there's this moment where Chaplin looks at WR kind of like, see, you don't know what you're talking about. And this has got to hurt, considering Hearst and everyone on board knows that Chaplin's given the gold rush to Marion.
That's Chaplin being Ben Stiller in Reality Bites, where he goes, I know her in ways you never will.
Dude, Grandma's Boy, where have you seen Grandma's Boy?
A long time ago.
Okay, Shirley Jones is in it, and like the joke is like her and Nick Swartzen shack up, and like the I guess the punchline is she's been a very promiscuous woman her entire life, and she talks about giving Charlie Chaplin a hand job, and Nick Swartzen goes, was he silent? Hearst suspects Davies and Chaplin have engaged in an affair, a suspicion shared by Ince, who seeks proof that he can present to Hearst in order to curry favor with him. In the waste paper basket in Chaplin's stateroom, Ince discovers a discarded love letter to Davies and pockets it with plans to produce it at an opportune moment. When he finally does, Hearst is enraged. His anger is fueled further when he finds a brooch he had given Davies in Chaplin's cabin. Hearst concludes it was lost there during a romantic liaison and rifles Marion's room for further evidence. I mean, was it on purpose that a lot of this resembled the hit 1997 James Cameron film Titanic? The ending of this, by the way, is literally the ending of Titanic.
So it would be Hearst going, I hope you enjoy your time together.
Exactly. They're not flaunting it so much in this, though. There's not like a part where he's in his room and fucking Kirsten Dunst and Charles Chaplin come in holding hands together, and
Oh, dude, I disagree. I think they're flaunting it more.
Well, they're doing the Charleston together. There is a scene, and also around this point in time too, there's this drugs are smuggled aboard the ship, and the liberals are smoking weed with some of the help on the flappers on the ship, and a game of charades turns not deadly but sexy.
All right, everyone, time for charades.
We call them charades.
It's pretty shameless. That's why I couldn't really be on board with these star-crossed lovers, so to speak, because they have some decency, show some respect to the guy that's hosting the party. Don't make everybody else uncomfortable.
If nothing else, just wait until you get back on shore and reconvene there.
Yeah, or don't flaunt it in front of everybody. That's the thing. On the dance floor, during the charades game, anytime really that at dinner, right? Anytime the camera has both of them on the same shot, or even sometimes when they're further apart, but we get close-ups, they're looking at each other, they're giggling. I mean, there are no assumptions here. I think that it's very clear. I think that Cary Elves is right when he tells Hearst, everybody knows, everybody can tell. I can't believe that Hearst actually needed proof to act. Like, I think that it was crystal clear that if they were not having an affair yet, they were about to have an affair.
Yeah. cause for concern was there.
Yeah. And the fact that the movie takes more than an hour to get to a point where they're all on the same level and they're like, okay, this is happening. Yes, they are attracted. They're cheating on him. I mean, it's too long. It would be different if they were actually being cautious and then they get discovered despite the fact that they're being very secretive about it. Then that would be more interesting. But no, this is like they're holding hands, they're kissing.
Yeah. In one of their moments together, she just tells Charles, if anyone asks you, just say it's cheap gossip. It's like, dog, there's like 15 people on this ship.
Nothing cheap about those moves on the dance floor.
Charleston, everybody.
Yeah. Do you think that Kirsten Dunst is the only one that took the Charleston workshop in pre-production? Everybody else skipped it?
Maybe that's the one thing about it she really committed to. She forgot to do anything else to commit to the role, but she was going to get the Charleston down. God damn it. There's a very, very visually funny scene that is, I think, comedy-wise unmatched in the rest of the movie around this point in time, where one of the gals is playing ping pong with Jennifer Tilly, and there's two of the wait staff, for lack of a better term, are just standing by, and they're playing like the worst ping pong you've ever seen in your life, and these balls are just flying everywhere, and the wait staff is going and picking them up and handing them back to them. It's a shot that lasts about maybe 30 seconds, but it's a comedic high point of the film where, they're just gossiping about.
She's playing with Carrie Elves' mistress, who is mad because Carrie Elves had promised her that he was going to be open about their relationship in this trip, and instead he's kept it more than hidden. Like she keeps asking him to introduce her to Hearst so she can, because she's an actress and she wants him to use his influence, and instead she spent most of the time in her room bored. So she finally decides to go and play with Jennifer Tilly to kill time. And then that scene, I think, ends with Carrie Elves' mistress saying, because she asks her, what do you do? And she goes, I'm Tom Hines' mistress. That's it. Fuck it.
It's out there now. But the tension on the ship is very real in terms of everyone knowing kind of what's going on, and also just the Hines trying to stir the pot and the frustration boiling over with WR. So armed with a pistol, Hearst searches the yacht for Chaplin in the middle of the night. Hines, meanwhile, runs into Davies, and the two sit and talk, with Hines donning a hat that Chaplin wore. Davies explains to Hines her love for Hearst and regrets an earlier affair with Chaplin. She states, I never loved him, just as Hearst arrives behind them. Thinking Davies is referring to him and mistaking Hines for Chaplin, a jealous Hearst shoots Hines. It's pretty intense. It's one of those older pistols, so it's not like, the deranged weaponry of today. So he gets shot in the back of the head, but he has enough to kind of look behind him and be like, what the fuck, before he collapses.
And then he lives for another 2 days.
With a narration at the end says something like, like most people with a bullet lodged in their brain, he lived for a few days and then died. But this is all witnessed by Lolly, who had heard noises and went to investigate. And she freaks out, so they shoot her full of morphine or something to get her to calm down.
Yeah. For a moment, it looks like Hearst is going to shoot her, too. Because he turns to see who's screaming, and he's still holding the gun. It's like, oh, man, get a grip.
It was a mistake. And this isn't a story I was familiar with beforehand, so I audibly reacted to this.
Okay, but you knew somebody was going to die, right? Because of the opening. So did you have any thoughts, like any guesses about who was going to bite it other than Chaplin?
No, not really. I mean, once this scene starts unfolding, you figure out what's going to happen. You don't want it to, but it does. But it was still surprising nonetheless.
Yeah, I think one of my notes says, where are the mix-ups? Is it really a Peter Bogdanovich movie? And then here's the mix-up. It's deadly. The mix-up is that it's not Charlie Chaplin. It's Tom Hines. It's the dumbest murder in the history of murders. Yeah,
my notes go, WR found their texts, and then it says Charlie Chaplin, the homewrecker, and then, oh shit. That's my next note. We get some corpse comedy, though, as they're wheeling Carrie Ells through the boat, and he's bobbling all over the place like a fucking cheap bobblehead.
A weekend at Heinz's.
There you go. And being the real man that he is, W.R. Hearst throws the gun overboard.
Like real men do.
And then calls Heinz's wife tells her he was having an affair. It went south and he shot himself in the head. And they're sending him. They port in San Diego, which I'll get to in just a second. But just really gross scene in terms of just the evilness and the lack of responsibility taken. And the way I'm assuming it was Bogdanovich on the other line doing the voice of Heinz's wife. But the way he's just like, this is partially your fault, you're to blame. But we're going to send him to this doctor and he'll be just fine. He's got a bullet in his brain.
This would be a lot more effective, I think, if the previous scene was not Hearst just breaking down and sobbing in Kirsten Dunst's arms. Come on. I mean, let's make him a super villain. I didn't need him to have a breakdown at this point. I think that if you want to portray him as this doddering old man through the first 2/3 of the movie, and then what would have been cool is the murder galvanizes him. He's like, all right, well, in for a penny, in for a pound. Already killed him. Now I have to be an absolute criminal and I'm going to manipulate everything. Hell, I really wanted him to do what he was threatened to do at some point, which is pin the whole thing on Chaplin, because that would have been just a masterstroke of evil. But he doesn't go that far. But instead, yes, you're right. He casually blames the wife and the mistress and then says that he'll pay for everything.
So it's all good.
Now, by God, Nell, I'm going to make sure that none of this gets in the papers.
Oh, my God, you have to.
Well, I just said I would, Nell.
Hearst arranges to dock in San Diego and have a waiting ambulance take the dying Heinz home. He phones the injured man's wife and tells her Heinz attempted suicide when Livingston tried to end their affair, assuring her the truth won't reach the media. To the rest of his guests, he announces Heinz's ulcers flared up and required immediate medical attention. Davies, of course, knows the truth and confides in Chaplin. Also armed with the knowledge is Parsons, who assures Hearst his secret will be safe in exchange for a lifetime contract with the Hearst Corporation, thus laying the groundwork for her lengthy career as one of Hollywood's most powerful gossip columnists. When Davies, tells Chaplin, I would almost guarantee this line was in the trailer. He clutches her and he goes, what the hell is going on here?
This is just Oscar clip after Oscar clip, right? I'm not saying that they're necessarily successful, but Jennifer Tilly gets her big... what is this, Alex? Is it a heel turn then? Because she's technically...
I don't know if it's a heel turn as much as it is just her moment to show her true colors.
Right. You underestimated me.
Yeah. She begins talking about considering all sides. She says, it's important to consider all sides. And Ed Herman goes, it's a goddamn gift.
Then Eddie Izzard gets his Oscar clip / trailer line, I guess, where he's just appalled at learning the truth. And then I guess, would you say your boy Herman gets an Oscar clip here too, when he's confronting Chaplin and Kirsten Dunst about the affair, just finally there in the open?
Yeah, this would probably be the best adapted screenplay scene, because he has his tearful admission of I know what's going on, because he hands her brooch back. But then also Chaplin's like, all right, well, we're going to leave. And Kirsten Dunst is basically tells Chaplin to fuck off. And he says something like, you've got him, or, you're picking him. And she says something like, I've got me, or I'm picking me, which you think this is her moment of realization. But then we get this just absolutely horrifying shot of people driving away from the boat. And she's in tears while a prideful W.R. Hearst has his arm around her and waving goodbye to people leaving. And
then, with just what remains of the movie, we'll find out that she never left him. So... Okay.
Stayed by his side until he died.
It really takes the power out of that line.
Yes.
Just says, I got myself.
Do you?
Yeah.
After seeing Heinz off, Hearst confronts Davies and Chaplin. He is berated by Chaplin, who expects Davies to join him. Hearst, however, challenges Chaplin to guarantee Davies that he can promise her a happy life when Chaplin fails to answer. Hearst informs Chaplin of the vow of silence he and the fellow guests have made to keep the weekend's activities secret. Chaplin despairs as he realizes a murder has strengthened Davies' love for Hearst. The film concludes with the guests leaving Heinz's funeral as Glenn relates what became of them. Livingston went on to star in a number of successful films, and her film salary, quote, inexplicably went from $300 to $1,000 a film. Davies starred in more of Hearst's films before finally being allowed to be featured in a comedy, Show People, in 1928, which was, as Chaplin predicted, a success and included a couple of cameo appearances by Chaplin. She stayed by Hearst's side until his death in 1951. Chaplin married his teen lover, Lita Gray, in Mexico, and his film The Gold Rush was an overwhelming success. Parsons worked for Hearst for many years and subsequently became one of the most successful writers in the history of American journalism. Tom Ince was largely forgotten after the events of his death. Very few newspapers reported it. No police action was taken, and of all the people on board, only one was ever questioned. It is concluded that in Hollywood, quote, the place just off the coast of planet Earth, no two accounts of the story are the same.
But that's not the end of it, Alex. As you rightly called out, we get the Titanic ending.
Well, okay, so we go back to black and white for all this, by the way, but then we go back to color.
It's a push and pull between Bogdanovich and the studio. You're not going to end it in black and white, damn it. It would have been more striking, I think, if we had gone back to the boat and now it's black and white, right? Mm-hmm. That final dance is in black and white. But it's really, it's the wedding dance in the Iron Claw, Alex. Like at the Von Erich wedding, when you're like the pan from right to left and you see the close-ups of everybody that's dancing and they're so happy, but you know that tragedy is around the corner, and here's the same thing. It's just everybody's doing the Charleston in slow motion as Eleanor closes her voiceover saying, yeah, we're all damned.
Yeah, she's like, I keep having this dream, and it fades to her dream, which is, you know, the only thing that wasn't there was Leo waiting at the end of the line to take her by the hand.
With the bullet, no, it would be Cary Elves at the end with the bullet wound on his head.
Just a big bandage on his head.
No respect for Cary Elves, no respect for Tom. And then that's it. It's over. P-Bog made a whole movie about exposing how shitty Hollywood was, is, forever will be. And surprisingly, it bombed.
And surprisingly, it was too long.
It probably soured a whole new generation of people so that they wouldn't want to work with him again.
No, yeah, he tried to make like this interesting tale of it, but then, like I said, by the end of it, it's kind of like, okay, well, they're all dancing. Like you point out the issues and like the depravity of it all, but then when the overwhelming sentiment is, yeah, I know. What are you going to do about it? What did you accomplish here?
The problem is that you see them dancing at the end and you're like, that looks like fun. Yeah, it sucks for Cary Elves, but that was a hell of a party. I wouldn't say no if they invited me.
I mean, I got a chance of like, what, 1 in 20 getting shot in the head? I'll take that for that party.
Right, because if you survive, your career is made. They'll just buy your silence and you'll be successful.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that. I was just thinking about like the party and the sightseeing. But yeah, you're right. If I survive, my silence has been bought and I'm set for the rest of my life.
Yeah, assuming you have the balls that Jennifer Tilly does, and you go up to Hearst or whoever committed the murder and tell them, hey, this is what I want. That's it. Made for life.
How much did he originally offered? Like 30 years, right? And she was like...
No, I think he said 7 years, 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, it's something small. $7? Yeah, no, he offers her like, you know, a few years and she's like, oh, come on now.
I saw you shoot a man in the head.
For real. You think a job for 7 years is worth that? Come on.
Well, Alex, that was the Cat's Meow, the penultimate Peter Bogdanovich feature film. It's coming to an end, Alex. It's almost over.
It's time to dock in San Diego and get the corpse off board and then get back to this. Get back on track.
Let's do it. Let's go to Real Talk.